Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. All right. I can't wait to introduce you to today's guest, competitive intelligence expert, speaker, award-winning author of Win-Loss Analysis, CEO, trainer, guide to marketers worldwide and businesses worldwide about learning about their wins, their losses, their clients, their buyers. Why did they buy? Ellen Naylor, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Oh, man. Yep. Very humbling experience to chat with you. Your book, like we said, we chatted with many people about it. It's opened my eyes as a marketer to really understanding the buyers. And this is like the theme for today. Why did we win? Why did we lose? Understanding our buyers is neglected so much in marketing. And I think I experienced this as a marketer personally, and we did all the gadgets and gizmos, and we never thought about who we're doing it for. So I wanted to invite you here and to learn from you. And so thank you. And here is Thor's hammer. I'm going to pass it over the screen here for you. Thor's hammer. Take the hammer. Now smash for me a myth about marketing, about strategy, maybe something that you've seen all the time. People do this, they mess it up, or they think one way and it really is like totally opposite. What do you want to smash?
In regards to win-loss, many people don't do it because they know why they win deals and they know why they lose deals. And so they don't need to ask the customer. They know. Okay. And of course, that's a huge myth because, of course, they don't know.
Right. They don't. So they don't know. Well, they certainly don't know what they lost usually because no one usually tells them. But when they win, you're saying they also don't really know why they win?
That's right. People think they know why they win. And a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, just do the losses. That's really all we care about. We just want to look at why we're losing." And I'm like, but don't you want to know why you're winning or what you could do to win a deal? Or don't you want to know how your implementation and training and customer service is going? You will not learn that from losses.
Right.
You need to learn your buyer's journey, whether they decided to buy from you, whether they decided that they don't want to buy from you, or even retention, just add-ons. Why are they continuing to do business with you, which is of course much cheaper than buying the first time, right? Retention is
totally.
Yeah.
So why don't people know? I mean, why don't people know the reasons for their wins?
Well, I think the reason they don't know the reasons for their wins is they believe what sales tells them. And there's also this arrogance. We know. We understand this. We understand the marketplace, why we win.
We got this. Crazy.
We got this. We got this down. It's kind of arrogance. And I think it's also psychological, a desire, we're good. We know why we're winning. And in fact, there are consultants who say, oh yeah, let the company, when they do win-loss interviews, let them interview the wins and hire a consultant just to interview the losses.
Huh. People say that? People actually say that?
Oh yeah, big name. And I'm kind of like, you want consistency, so make up your mind who you want to do what, who's on first base. And because you get a different response when you do your own interviews as a company employee versus if you outsource them to somebody who is a neutral third party who people are happy to talk to.
Yeah, there's got to be something about like you have a bias, right? Like I have biases all the time around why I think people buy or don't. So if I did or at least half the interviews or the interviews, I could see that bias creeping in there. Do you see a lot of people like almost like they self-select the answers that kind of back up their own bias?
That can happen, and actually, it's a challenge for me as well. As a consultant, you're hired to be a neutral third party, but who is biased? Everybody's biased.
True.
And that's always why it's a good idea to record your interviews and listen to them later on, and catch yourself and learn and grow. I do that. I can continue to grow that way because you're really being paid to be a neutral observer as much as you can be one.
Right. Yeah, I
And
think
the customer is more apt to give you a neutral answer too, because even though they know who you are going to give the answer to, you're still not them, for lack of a better way of putting it.
you break that down. So they're avoiding the disappointment of telling, the truth. Like, I really just, you laugh funny, so I wanted to buy from the other guy. Or, you know, it came down to, or I really didn't like the sales guy. He didn't listen to me. He didn't have my best interest in mind, so I didn't want to buy from you. And it's those kind of things that maybe they wouldn't want to tell the company directly because you don't want to get them in trouble, but you might tell a third party.
That's right. And a lot of times we just find out simply when it comes to the salesperson that maybe the chemistry wasn't there.
Right.
The salesperson is not a bad person, because you hear the customer that you're interviewing as well and realize, oh, this is one that just didn't work out for that reason as well. Of course, there's many other reasons too that have nothing to do with the salesperson.
Right.
Usually the reason what deals are won or lost are not because of the salesperson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what we're talking about here, and why we had you on, we are chatting with Parmalee, some of my favorite episodes, and she mentioned win loss, and we started hashing into it, opened my eyes to it. I wanted to have you come on here and just continue to learn from you. Perhaps for people maybe didn't catch that episode, win loss analysis is the book you wrote, but the concept of win loss, could you break it down? Kind of describe what it is, and maybe how you came to that conclusion.
Sure. I'll start out with what it is and then I'll tell you how I got there. How's that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So win-loss is the process of interviewing customers and those who chose a competitor after the sale is consummated. And that is the very important thing, after the sale is consummated. Because that way they know you're not selling to them. You're there
Mm-hmm.
to listen. You want to understand what their buyer journey was. You want to make it better for them, basically, right? Because the buyer journey is long today, and 80% of what they look at, or 80% of it, is done before they call sales. You need to understand that part of the journey as well. And that's why when people are upset about, oh, my sales force is going to be so upset by this whole thing happening, I'm like, but wait a minute. Only 20% of the time is spent with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask questions, we're not just talking about how sales doing. We want to know about the service issues. We're looking at the company reputation. We're looking at product attributes. And yes, we care about the relationship health. So that's kind of win-loss. And at the end of these interviews, you analyze what you've learned. And some of it's qualitative and some of it's quantitative. The quantitative stuff is boring, but it's actually very useful. You do want to know how many you did, blah, 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 blah. What in general did you learn? What industries were they in? But the qualitative is usually what's the most precious, because you get product development ideas out of it. And this is always an interesting one. So often customers will say, but that's not so. And I'm like, well, the customer thinks it's so, and they buy based on perceptions. Why do they think it's so?
Right.
Is that the competition feeding them? Or is it that they're not getting your message? These are things that you need to investigate further. And that's what I like about win-loss. It's just a stepping stone to so much more that companies can do. So
the whole concept of, because earlier this year, or it's next year already. Earlier last year, I chatted with Adele Ravella. We talked buyer personas, and she was a big champion of talking to buyers to at least figure out what are the common paths they follow, and that made sense. And then Parmalee, and now with your book, it makes sense to also to talk to the winners, but then also talk to the losers. Let's talk about winners for a second. So are you gathering persona type information as well? What are the different kind of things you're gathering? Is just a ton? How do you
it's a
recommend?
lot, and it varies by customer. And
Okay.
With each of my clients, we'll figure out what is it we're trying to get out of our interview process here. What are we really trying to learn? What are the shortcomings and what are the strengths? What are the things they can build off of?
Right.
And they're all interested in the buyer journey. That's the common thing they're all interested in.
Yes.
That 80% before they come to sales. How can we change it so that improve on it so that they want to come to sales sooner, more often, this sort of thing. How can we shorten our sales cycle? That's what people are interested in as a bottom line.
Yeah, I
You
am
know,
too. How do you deliver that? I mean, what kind of mystical questions do you ask that? Because obviously, if you ask them, "Hey, how do I make you buy quicker?" Maybe it's a little too self-serving. But what kind of how do you get at that kind of information?
you ask a lot of open-ended questions.
Uh,
It's a conversation. Make
okay,
them
I like that.
comfortable.
Yep.
And just basically ask them, where all did you look before you came to sales? Something as simple as that. Where do you look that's a valuable source for you when you're deciding about people in this space, about companies to work with in this space? Do you look at industry reports, for example, stuff like that? But a lot of times I don't even have to ask as much as that, as I just said. A lot of times I just simply ask, where do you look to get
Where do
information
you look?
about this product? What do you value the most? Yeah, and that's how you learn, oh, we're not doing such a good job with getting into this space, certain
Right.
aspects of the space of where the customer looks. And then you also might ask, and which of them is the most valuable to you? You know?
Right. Which ones do you trust? Which ones
Yeah,
do you listen to? And I like that. Yeah, and I bet you the cumulative information of 18 of the 20 people or however many you recommend, all said they looked at a Gartner report. Well,
that's
okay,
right.
it's time to give them a call. Let's brief those analysts for a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you find out about sources you didn't even know existed
interesting.
that they really value. Like users groups, or not users groups, wrong word. The online reports that people can look at about how products are working.
Hmm.
Those
Like
those are
G2
very,
crowd and those kinds of,
yes,
yeah,
those types. Those are very highly regarded more and more over time. And there's
interesting.
more and more of them coming out all the time too. So that's hard to stay up on, you know. And
Yeah,
there's always the word of mouth thing, and that you can't do much about that. But you can figure out different ways to reach your customer. Like I'm working with one right now, and they're just saying, yeah, we're realizing we need to have more user group meetings. They're
yeah,
a less mature company, so they haven't been in business that long, and they're saying, yeah, we really need to work on that. So people really understand fully, but also so they can talk with other customers that are using our product.
right. Huh.
So there's lots of things you learn when you do win-loss, other than just how to close more deals quickly and blah, blah, blah. You learn about operational changes you can make, even though you're not even asking about them. And that's the beauty of win-loss. It's a conversation. You've got
Right.
maybe 10 questions you want to cover, but the next thing you know, the customer takes you down a different alley. That's what they want to share with you. And the customer ends up finding about things they didn't know they didn't need to know, you know,
Sure.
and they can be really valuable.
Do you have any experiences that come to mind, sort of breakthroughs around that company?
Well, one that I don't know if I call it a breakthrough, but I was like, shame on you to my customer. The
Yeah.
customer sold software, and I think they sold 6 different software packages,
Okay.
and they had a different way to register and order for each of the 6 different
Oh,
softwares. So you can imagine what I got from the accountant that I didn't think it would be necessary to interview. She was just like, I'd like to be able to order very simply what I want to from any of the 6 packages very easily. I can't
yeah.
do that today. Stuff like that. And that what does that do? That's customer retention,
Oh, yeah.
big
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And that's really, it's not sexy to talk about. That's why we say win loss. It's sexy, right? But
Yeah.
retention is actually much more sexy because it's a lot cheaper, right? You've already got the base. You want to keep
Yeah.
them, right? You want to grow. You want to cross sell.
That's also another good point about talking to your existing customers.
Yes. And even though that's not win-loss, the same skills can be used, conversational skills.
I imagine so. Yeah.
And it's a big deal. And companies do that somewhat with what they call customer satisfaction. But I think a lot of times it's good to go beyond customer satisfaction. Just how's it going? Just simply that. and keep it wide open, not how satisfied are you with our stuff, just how's it
Mm-hmm.
going? How's it working out for you? You know?
Yeah. You know, the whole scalable thing, and who was I chatting with the other day that was saying, some of the best experts, I'm going to misquote him, but says like, when you're starting out, do things that don't scale, just talk to people. But I suppose that lesson could continue on the talk to people. But, like instead of sending out that customer survey, I got one today actually. It said, would you recommend us? It was the classic, would you recommend us to a friend type question. And I think I put a 7 on there.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, a little bit more dialogue from people,
Yeah.
actually talking to them, having a conversation with them
Yeah.
to
And
discover
going
all
deep,
these things. Yeah, going deep.
going
Okay.
deep and
Yeah.
listening. And that's always my goal is when I'm on these calls, oh, Ellen, you were talking too much. Not so much next time. It's
Right.
just you really want to be listening. And the other thing you want to do before these calls is think about all the different ways a person might answer the questions that you have, kind of like a decision tree.
Okay.
And if they answer this way, I'll go this way, maybe, or because conversation never goes as you might have planned.
Sure.
So that way, when it doesn't go, which it usually doesn't go, then you're set. You're set with lack of structure, basically,
Right.
and that's a good thing when you're doing these interviews is that you're not too structured, really.
Okay. Not too structured. Make it more flowy, like a conversation, even like a really good podcast.
Right, right.
Just
So
kind of
you don't
roll
have
with
any
it.
notes, you roll, and of course
Yeah.
with win-loss you do have notes because the customer does want these 10 questions answered or whatever they
Right.
are.
Right.
And
We
I
have
always
notes
tell
too,
them,
but they're secret.
that's right. We're not telling anyone.
That's right. Um, yeah, I have a question. Do you set anything up at the beginning? It's like, is it just general rapport building? Because I know the idea. A lot of people have asked too, but how do you get the truth out of people? And maybe it
Oh,
helps just that you're not the company, but maybe you are the company. But like, how do you ask questions? And I know this is a topic you're very interested in as well, and actually get the truth out of people without you're not pouring water over their heads or anything, but you want to nicely get the real reasons out of them.
well, that's always a challenge, whether you do these interviews blind or not. Because if you do them blind, you figure you'll have more neutrality. On the other hand, a lot of times they try to figure out who is it that hired you. It's human nature, right? And
Oh
once
yeah.
they figure it out, then they'll be a little more chatty. But when you are transparent and say company X hired me, and but the reason they hired me is we'd like to be easier to do business with, develop better products, and those sorts of messages. Not, can you help me out?
Right.
uh,
I guess if it goes well, that's one thing, but does that make it sound like you're offloading your responsibilities of talking to your customers to someone else?
no, it actually doesn't,
Okay.
because the sales. How do I put this? The sales relationship with the customer is very precious and sacred. And customers in general, and this is just human nature, don't want to tell the bad news about sales, as you were alluding to earlier.
Right.
They don't want to say, hey, I I didn't like this person or whatever.
Right. Because you may need to
You
buy
know,
an upgrade or something later on from them.
right. And they just don't want to, regardless of whether they need to build an upgrade. They're just not comfortable with doing that. They're more comfortable just letting it loose, with somebody who does not work for the company, even though they know it's going to go to the company. But back to your thing about the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spend a lot of time doing this. I can tell when someone's lying to me usually.
Uh-oh.
The tone of voice changes, the speed with which they talk changes. Um,
Wow.
Sometimes they use too many words because they're being defensive. There's a lot out there online.
Hmm.
Um, and I make a study of it really. And so when people I suspect are lying, a lot of times I'll throw out a question that's definitely not on the script, something like, why do you say that? What makes you say that? And a lot of times they will change the subject because
Oh.
they know that I know without saying anything, and then we'll get on to it. And you know, even sometimes I'll go as far as to saying, where did you learn this? Something like that. Or, interesting. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of come back to people and let them know you're not quite buying into it.
How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen actually that often.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the reason why is I've been doing this a while, and
Mm-hmm.
people realize when I get on with them that I'm there for them. I don't have an agenda that's going to hurt anyone. I make a
Yeah.
point of that. And because sometimes what people are uncomfortable with in win-loss is they're worried the salesperson's going to get fired.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you tell them that's not going to happen, or I mean, you can't really guarantee that?
Sometimes I do,
Do you?
if I think it's necessary. It's not something, well, sometimes with losses, and I'll cover this with the customer, um, because, when you win a deal, of course you're not going to get fired, but losses, and you do want to be very sensitive about that. And so, depending on the culture, I might even write in my introductory email, and no one is going to lose their job as a result of our interview. I've actually written that a couple of times in losses where I've sensed it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about why you can usually not be lied to if you do your homework before you initiate even that first introductory email, because it's very important that you're organized and a straight shooter when you do this.
Right.
And the straight shooter is you send them an email, let them know why you're doing this, what's in it for them, right? Sometimes you might offer them some remuneration, and other times you don't. It depends on the industry, the practice, all this kind of thing, right?
Mm.
But they need to understand that. But I always look them up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I look up the company. If they're not on LinkedIn, I look up the company. I look up something where I can, in the email that I'm sending them to introduce myself to them, let them know that I know a little something about them,
Mm-hmm.
that I've gone to a little extra trouble. I'm not a telemarketer,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and
You're not some survey hack. Like,
right. And that does make them more apt to, first of all, open up the email if you have a nice title, not market research, for example.
right. Right.
It
Yeah.
says delete. So you need to think through all these steps in win-loss. It is a process, and we're also inundated with emails today, right? So you need to think about, are they even going to open up my email?
Right. I mean, I guess you would send out a lot to try to get a few people. I mean, what kind of numbers do you look for? Do you invite a certain number of people to eventually have 20 of each, or is it per whatever the customer wants to pay for, or do you have a number that you like to get to?
I don't. It really depends on what the
Okay.
customer is looking to accomplish. In general, though, I notice 20 is not a bad number, you
Yeah.
know, for trends and issues and some actions to change. But I think the key is, and a lot of customers don't do this, they'll just do 20 and then they don't do anything else. You benefit the most if you do 20 like each quarter, or 20 every half a
Um,
year or something like that, a bigger number. But it depends on what size company you are, where you're at in your process, what your focus is, why you're doing win-loss in the first place.
yes.
You need to have your goals. Why are you doing this? And once you have your goals, then okay, these are the customers I need to talk to then.
Yes.
And not everybody's going to say yes. Let's assume 50% do.
Right.
Um, let's assume,
Yeah.
that's a good assumption. And assuming, we get decent contact information, and I have a process set up for that too, that I have customers giving good contact information, because that can slow up the whole process. I want to know their name, their phone number, their email address, win,
Yeah.
loss, were there competitors involved? A little bit about the account, how it was
Sure.
left. That way, when I call the customer, I'm not wasting their time. We can we can have a little small talk, but you know, it isn't stuff I should already know, I guess is
Right.
what I'm trying to say.
Hearing you say this, I'd love you to chat with all of my customers, past, present, future. How do you prioritize? Because obviously people probably don't have the money banks to, because it just seems like it'd be such great information. Maybe is it the trends? You get enough trends and you can kind of call it a day, but it seems like such a great insight to get on everyone.
Well, if you have a lot of budget money, but my thought is really, if you sat back and thought about what are the goals you're really trying to accomplish in your business,
Yeah.
you probably don't need to talk to everybody to get to that,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Yeah. Are you trying to grow it a certain way? Are you trying to sell people additional services? Are you noticing people could use certain help in certain areas that you'd like to get into?
Mm.
Pick a base that way. There's a lot of reasons to do win-loss, and I don't know that you benefit by talking to everyone, you know,
Right. Huh.
in that level of depth.
Right. So when you work with companies to figure out who you do talk to, is there some sort of logic you recommend their best wins and their best losses or their biggest dollar amounts, or is it kind of up to them case by case?
It really varies a lot.
Okay.
I can't really say for that there's a hard and steady rule about it. You know, a lot of people want to invest more time, not surprisingly, with those customers that are their bread and butter.
Right.
So they'll say, hey, 500,000 on up, whatever it is, you know, the customers that build that amount, that's who we're going to focus on. But
Right.
others are saying, hey, you know, this one competitor is really crushing us, and they weren't last year.
Huh.
You know, there's that too. So it's your goals. You need to figure out what your goals are. Then you decide who you're going to talk to.
Have you ever done it like you called? Well, I guess if you call a loss, that's somebody else's win. So it's almost
Right?
like you're getting reverse engineering on
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
And you're finding out why they selected somebody else and why they didn't select you.
Yeah,
Was it
let's talk about losses, for a bit then. So it sounds
yeah,
like a lot of people, they're thinking, let's get the loss information when we just talked about the
yeah.
wins being such a critical part of it. But now that we've talked about that, the losses, it makes sense to have you as an intermediary, um, having these conversations. Do they act differently? Do you ask different questions for the ones where you know that they've, rejected this company?
A lot of times I will ask some different questions since we lost them.
Right.
I want to know who won the business. Sometimes the customer that hires me knows that, but sometimes they don't. And I'll ask them what they were looking for in a solution, for
Mm.
example, which that won't be that different. But what will be different is, and how are these people satisfying that for you, you know? But a lot of the questions are pretty similar. You know, if you think about it, how was our proposal? The company perception, all those
Mm.
sorts of issues, they're the same whether it's a win or a loss. In a win, you really want to find out what you did right, but you often find out what you did wrong as well,
Right. Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
And you also find out there's certain things that you do really well, but you want to make sure you still do them. There might be things that product management thought, well, you know, we don't really need to do this anymore for whatever reason, or this particular product,
Right.
you know, this feature here, and then you find out, no, actually, it's being used and valued, or it's being used in a different way than you had imagined.
Right.
Unintended use, you find that out as well. But in the losses, you also find out that the reason they even entertained you in the first place, which is interesting, you know, you didn't win
Sure.
the business. And I know in some, um, one account rep was so good, but the solution just wasn't the right one for this customer. They needed a more sophisticated solution. But they liked this rep so well, and they made a point of telling me this. But we gave her 3 references for other people she should go after with
Oh,
this
wow.
product, you know?
Sure.
So you really do hear some good stuff too, even in losses.
Hmm.
And so it isn't what often people think when you win, oh, you're going to find out all the great stuff you do and you're not going to find out about the competition. No, you might find out a lot more about the competition. Plus, think about the psychology behind a win. They'd like to think they made the right decision. That's your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they did their homework to get there,
Right.
you know? And you need to keep measuring up to keep their business, their loyalty.
Right.
Right from the get-go, do they have a good taste? Are they happy with the decision they made, you know? Like I know with
Yeah.
one of them, they were
Sure.
saying, gee, you know, When we call up tech solutions to try to get answers to our issues, they're trying to cross-sell us, upsell us
Uh,
before they solve our problem. You can imagine how well that goes through, but that's
uh,
on the win side, you know.
yeah,
But on the
imagine
losses
that.
side, you really do find out sometimes that your customer thinks you're pretty cool stuff. And
Hmm.
they might not have considered you a year ago. You know, things like that. Lots of little details. You find out, oh, well, gee, my brand awareness is growing compared to what it was.
Right.
That's great. Yeah.
How do you take all this data and then turn it into action? Because that seems like, is that just your secret sauce? Or, I think I've got my head around, I can do the interviews
Yeah.
or what those look like. Great conversations. But then to your point, all these little tidbits that come out, are they just bullets on a report, or what kind of?
You try to organize the information the best you can so it is actionable. And that is the hardest part, in my opinion, of win-loss analysis. How do you take what people have told you and spit it back in a way that is legible or
Mm-hmm.
visible to our Twitter world today?
Yep.
Because nobody wants long reports, because you've learned so much. The reports have to be somewhat long, you know, but they don't have to be as long as they used to, because, you know, we do have a lot of visual things we can do. But I think the real key is to not be biased in how you're going to structure your report, and let the conversations and the analysis and what you learned be your structure. So for example,
I like that.
you've been losing to a customer and you're trying to crush that. You're like, I used to win 50% of the time. I'm only winning 25% of the time. What's going on here? And so we hone in on that competitor, and we try to hone in within that competitor why it is, what it is about them that has changed in the last year, or what the customer thinks has changed about you in the last
Mm-hmm.
year, your company. And that's why they're selecting the competitor.
Right. So you have that open mind, and it's almost like your report really isn't pre-written, where you're
Now,
filling in a couple holes. You're going to allow where the conversation goes to dictate the key parts. That's kind of exciting. You don't know that, 16 of the 20 people are all going to talk about this little tiny feature that actually was the deciding factor, and you had no idea. And that becomes prominent in some other discovery. And yeah, I could see how you would just want to let it, wait and see what you're going to get. Do some pre-work, but then be open to what you're going to hear.
yeah. Yeah, because that's really the valuable information you get is the information that you didn't know you didn't need to know, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden there it is, boom, you know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
could I could totally see that.
But making it actionable is really the whole point, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of times we'll come up with 10 or 20 ideas based on what customers have said for action the customer might take. And we might have 10 or so things that really aren't quite so actionable, but you might want to discuss this with your management team
Mhm.
and see where you want to go with this. Maybe you need to go back and talk to that customer a little bit more. Um, this might, or the other thing comes is sometimes there's selling opportunities that come out of this.
Oh, for sure, I could
Yeah.
imagine, yeah. Yeah, and who better than, somebody was nice enough to ask and kind of probably paints them in a positive light, the fact that they were interested.
Yeah.
And someone like you or someone, a quality person's talking to them. It wasn't just, Chesh threw me to the wolves. Somebody called me from, some other country and treated me like a number. No, it's like, no, to your point, you did some research ahead of time, you know about them. And this is like a real quality conversation, not just like a verbal survey.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a conversation, and they have the opportunity to be heard, to be listened to.
Right.
And people don't get that opportunity very much today in our little digital society. And so I find once I get people on the phone, they're pretty chatty, although there are some that are less chatty, as you might imagine.
Sure.
They're really super duper busy, but in 10 or 15 minutes, they can cover a lot. And I hardly even have to ask them any questions because they're so stressed out about whatever their schedule is, but they're saying, well, this is good time as any, this kind of, or we had agreed on this time, but life
Yeah.
happens, right? So
We
yeah,
agreed, but with grievances. Yeah. Do you record them or just take really good notes?
I do both.
Okay.
I do both. And the reason I do both is I like to take good notes, but the recording helps me get
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
tone of the interview and the tone around certain issues in the interview. Also gives me an idea of you might want to go back to this customer and ask them about X. When I go back and listen to the interview, I could never pick up on that just taking notes.
Right.
Those innuendos that actually can make a difference in business, how business might be done with that customer. So that's the reason I record them.
That makes sense. Even, you have to keep up with the flow of questions maybe, or you are just actively listening and maybe you're not perceiving. It reminds me of there's that book, Never Split the Difference. It
Oh,
was written by a
I'll have to write
FBI,
that down.
yeah, FBI negotiator. I read this
Uh-huh.
recently. Never Split,
What's the
Voss
difference?
is his name. Let's see. Who is this guy? Chris Voss. So he was the head hostage negotiator for the FBI,
Yeah.
and he just talks about they would have people talking, one person's talking to the bad guy, and there's like
Uh-huh.
three other people in the van listening, and each one is tasked with listening for a different thing, you know
Yeah.
because in the moment you're just trying to talk to the guy. Somebody else is listening probably for tone, somebody else is probably listening for background noises or facts, and they're writing things down so that you can have active. So by recording you're able to have multiple people, essentially yourself times a couple, to listen to that and pick up on what you might have missed the first time. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. By the way, you were asking about truthiness a little earlier,
Yeah.
and I'd like to put a plug in for a book I really like. It's called Spy the Lie.
Spy the Lie. Cool.
Yeah. Your discussion about Voss is what brought it up because it's a
Yeah.
similar world. It's let me see if I can find it. I might have it right here, actually.
Yeah, for everyone listening, there's an amazing bookcase right behind, with win-loss analysis perfectly placed, and then lots of other tomes of.
Okay. And this one is on the floor. I have a pile of 10 books that
I'm impressed you found it.
I am a bookie. This is the book I'm talking about, Spy the Lie.
Oh, look at that.
So your audience can kind of take a look at it. And it's written by former CIA types, and it's on how to detect deception.
Oh
And
yeah, cool.
I'm very interested in that. Now, the vantage point that they're really writing the book from, though, is similar to Voss, and that is where you're interrogating somebody who's
Mm.
probably done something bad, you suspect, right? I mean, it's the
Oh, okay.
country security, this sort of thing. It's still very interesting, though, because
Right.
you can you can look at the TV, for example, when there are certain interviews going on. We will mention no names, and you can tell how many lies are being told by just looking at their face and their
Interesting.
mouth and the angle and the tone of their voice and etc. It's just
Is that the eyes look one way versus another kind of thing,
there's the
or
eye
is it more
thing, there's the
complicated?
change of tone of voice,
Sure.
there's because people are pretty good, or if they've been trained, they're pretty good about their facial expressions, but their hands and their feet, their appendages, their change of their body.
Uh-huh.
When you're sitting across from somebody, you notice they cross their legs differently all of a sudden. They move, they twitch, they start doing this,
Can't
they're
help it.
doing this, you know.
Yeah.
There are all these different actions people take. And in fact, in this book, they're saying we always make sure they're sitting on a chair that's more like a rocker. So we observe all their body actions.
Oh, yeah. So they can't help but rock. So it's hard
Yeah.
to keep it
So the
interesting.
reason I read this, though, was I was trying to just pick out most of the time we are on a phone call with somebody, or we're on what we're doing,
Sure. Yeah.
Zoom or Skype or whatever. But even on Zoom or Skype, you can still notice people's facial expressions, which is helpful.
Yes.
You don't get to see the rest of their body, but boy, when you're asking a question and somebody's expression just changes, even
Mm,
just for a flash of a second, you've hit some kind of a chord,
right.
you know? So it's very, very interesting reading to me. I've never worked in the security world in terms of the FBI or the CIA, but I've been trained by one or two of them. And I really admire what training they must go through to get done what they get done.
Oh,
You know?
100%. And just,
Yeah.
I totally respect the ability to pick up those, micro signals or whatever they might be. Sometimes I lose myself in the conversation, which is probably has its places.
Yeah.
But the people that, can take a step back and observe the little glance or the little frown. Sometimes I think
Yeah.
watching TV and sometimes if we're looking at a show, we'll pick up on that little, like someone, like they frowned momentarily for a second, or they made an angry face, like just for 2 seconds, they just did that. And when you're like, huh, what is that going on? Um,
Yeah.
all fascinating. Just, it's the study of, you know, people being people.
Yeah, it is. And I always admire, great journalists like Nina Totenberg, one of my all-time
Mm.
favorites at NPR. Um, they know how to conduct a conversation. And what's it, Terry Gross? There's another one. They always did their homework before they ever would be conducting an interview. They'd obviously done enough reading of whatever that book was, and they made the person right away feel at home
Yeah.
on that call. And they never saw their face. It was all done, over the telephone probably. So
Right.
I really admire people like that because they got to come out there every day and do this. Like
Yeah.
Terry Gross, that
Yeah.
show is every day.
Huh. And especially when they're like maybe not forthcoming witnesses, like interview, it's one thing, but I guess even in interviews, you could get set people up to be cranky and closed minded. And there's plenty of those videos where, dumb people ask movie stars the wrong question and they just shut down, because it's just like you're trying to poke or something, but it's too self-serving. So it just shuts everything down, and you don't get the info you're looking for.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
know,
in my book, I mentioned personality types, which is maybe,
ooh,
maybe it's my sort of
I love that
skeptical
topic. Keep going.
sort of side. And so when you're interviewing people, it's good to be aware of what sort of type of person they are. Are they the type that's a know-it-all that doesn't really?
We all
I,
know those people.
I wasn't allowed to use those in my book. That was edited away, but we all,
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
They said, that's not
editors.
very kind. I'm like, well, maybe it isn't, but it's
Really? Because
true.
that person. Well, I guess we know how to deal with that person, right? You just, oh, maybe we don't. Like those people are the tough ones but I guess you can spot them. You're like, okay, you know about this too, huh? Really? You know about African swallows, and oh, you know about this other topic too, diamonds. Really? Oh yeah, I'm the expert on that. Oh, okay.
Or, sometimes when you're interviewing, you've been told this person's an expert in a certain way. So you're
Oh,
expecting them to be an expert, right?
yes.
And you find out in win-loss, this happens sometimes. They tell you this is the person you want to talk to at the company. This was a key influencer, whatever their role is. And so you call them and you find out they've left the company. So you have
Oh.
to talk to someone on the fly who was just using the product but was not a decision maker. And you think, I wonder how valuable that will be. Actually, it's often very valuable because they
Mhm.
didn't make the decision. You find out how well the product really works,
Right.
what it does well and what it doesn't do well, because that's what they know about. Or to the previous point, though, you find out, no, this really isn't the right person to talk to. And after you've talked for just a short bit, you just say, gee, I'm sensing that maybe this is not such a good use of your time or something like that. Is there somebody else in the company who is a little bit more involved in this? Because I don't feel right taking your time, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll tell you who it is. And then you'll find the person. So if you're very polite to them and
Hmm.
don't hurt their feelings, because they're often very sensitive, that's the reason they are the way they are.
Right.
And they have kind of a complex, they'll often be happy to tell you who you ought to be talking to. And then there's the very knowledgeable person who realizes the value of their knowledge. So they're
Hmm.
not going to impart it to you that readily. Until you sort of prove yourself, make them realize you're there for
Right.
them, or you're for real, whatever it might be. It varies by person. Then there's the type that's very knowledgeable, but they don't realize the value of what they know. They're wonderful, right? That's who we all want to
They
talk
are.
to.
They're not holding the information hostage. They just let it go.
Let it go, man. Often scientific types are that way, right? Technical types. They're
Sure.
so excited about what they're doing. They just, you know. And then we have the clams, the people who just don't want to really talk.
Do you actually name them all and give them nicknames
Oh,
like?
I'm going to nickname them all. Yeah, this
Oh
book I'm writing
yeah.
right now, I'm adding clams and nerds to my qualifications.
Oh,
I don't
awesome.
I don't have problems with clams or nerds because I'm kind of a nerd myself, so I can talk to
Exactly.
you. But clams, people are just not clammy with me. They
Right.
they just aren't. And but I know that is a tendency. Some people are monosyllabic, and a lot of times I get by that by just sort of laughing and going, "Don't you have anything else to say?" Or you just kind of kid around with them a little bit, and next thing you know, they're talking. Once
Yes.
that type starts talking, then they don't want to stop.
It's true. Sometimes I've even interviewed people like that, and it's if you can, if it's almost like when you touch on the passion, or you touch on the thing that they're really interested in, that can open them up. I've had like really just sort of flat and just, okay, and then you get onto that thing, and they're just like to your point.
They
It's
go nuts.
different person that way.
Yeah. And that's what we're looking to get out of in win-loss interviews. We're trying to get to where their passion is about what they do and don't like in their journey, how it worked and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that isn't always contained in the questions that the customer wants you to ask. And that's why you need to be kind of open-ended and kind of let it flow, right?
Right. When you mentioned the clams too, and I want to ask you about that in the book
Yeah.
as well. But when you mentioned the clams, I've been on some sales calls and sort of observer or third party to some calls where it was very clear, at least from what I was hearing, that
Mm-hmm.
the salesperson didn't really care about, the prospect, who maybe didn't really care about the like being there. And it was almost like that, you know, it was too self-serving, and it kind of just shut everything down, where it was closed lips. I don't want to help you help me. I don't, because you might not be trying to help me. You're probably just helping you. And people just, it was like Cold War detente type stuff from the clams. And
Wow.
that was unfortunate to hear that, but you could tell it was just that it was that self-serving nature of the people involved, that they didn't trust. It was like trust. They didn't trust that they
Yeah.
should share that information. Sounds like with the other ones, with the people that have the information, that hold it hostage, because they're like, are you worthy of this thing? Because I know exactly why I bought, and I could tell you, and it might help you out a lot, but I'm not sure if I
Yeah.
want to help you out.
Right.
They hold it back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is that book? So you're writing this new one, if you can talk about it.
Well, God knows when I'll get to it because I have a very busy year this year. So I'll get
Dude.
to it when I'm in my dreams probably.
Yeah.
But I'm writing another book, and I want it to be, and I have no title for it yet, but that's the hardest thing with writing books to me. It's getting a good title.
Sure.
I wish I were better at that. But it's how to capture in conversation what you're looking for.
Mm,
And by the way, the truth.
what you're looking for and the truth.
Yeah.
This is interesting. It sounds like this is a perfect follow-on to, the original Win
I think
Loss.
it is. Yeah, I have a couple of chapters in Win-Loss about, how to be a better conversationalist, basically,
Yeah.
and elicitation, how to get people to talk to you. A couple chapters on that, a chapter on that, I should say, and that comes from what I learned from my friend John Nolan in the intelligence world about
Mm.
elicitation. Yeah. So, but I have a lot more that I have in mind for that next book,
That's
and
awesome.
God knows when I'll get it written. 2020 maybe.
Right. I don't know how you get any of these things done. And so really, I'm fascinated to know, who are you? How did you become this buyer whisperer, speaking and learning from people in these conversations? I know a lot of marketers can be kind of shy behind the technology or whatnot, but you're just out there talking to folks. How did you become this? Take us back to, little Ellen, or wherever you want to go. Curious.
Well, curious, that's the good word. I've
Yeah.
been curious ever since I can remember.
Really?
Ever since I can remember, even as a little girl. And I think I got it from my mother. because we used to always tease her, "Oh, Mom, you ask too many questions." Guess what? So does the daughter. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of it. I'm just curious about things, and I can't learn enough. You know, that's how I've always been. I was born and raised in Japan in an international community,
Wow.
so I learned a lot about different perspectives and different ways of living as a child. And of course, when you're a child, you just don't think about that that's different from other people.
Sure.
It's your life, it's your little baby box life, right? And started traveling at a very young age as well. And that's not so unusual today, but it was in my day.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Let's
yeah.
not go back to my day, but yeah. And um,
Well,
how did
so,
I get
I mean, did
a
you,
lot of this? Like
yeah.
most people in competitive intelligence, we didn't plan to get into competitive intelligence.
Huh.
In my case, I started in sales, retail sales, and then B2B sales. And I got interested in
Interesting.
competitive intelligence when I was in sales, since it did help you win more business to at least um, understand what the customer is learning about the competitor's products and services and reliability and all this kind of thing. And so I started out in sales, and I also was so interested in the competition, I was training other salespeople on how to beat the competition. And
Right.
then I got into competitive intelligence when the first AT&T breakup happened, and I started the competitive intelligence unit at Bell Atlantic, what was Bell Atlantic, now Verizon,
Oh,
in 1985. That's a long time ago. And it was a lot of fun. I was young, and nobody had done this because we were a new company. So it was a great opportunity for somebody in their 20s
mm-hmm.
to start something where nobody was really telling you what to do because they weren't real sure what to do. And you were just figuring it out. And along the way, I found out about SKIP. Uh, it was called the Society of Competitive Intelligence Professionals, SCIP, and now it's called Strategic Competitive Intelligence Professionals. Same acronym though, SCIP.
Hmm.
Because it's been through, like a lot of associations, ups and downs and acquisitions and all this kind of good stuff.
Sure.
So, so that's really how I got into it. And I really, I talked my way into my job from sales into, starting this unit. And it was during the divestiture. And I had very big accounts, but I couldn't sell them anything because that's the phase of divestiture we were in. And so I just said,
Ah.
the business office could actually take care of these very big customers for this year. And my boss, after 10 minutes, said, "You're right, they could. What would you like to do?" That's how I got into intelligence. I said, "That's what I want to do." And he said, "Okay, young lady, we'll see what we can do for you." So, and just about everybody I know who is in competitive intelligence that's been in it for a while has a very similar story in that most
Hmm.
of us didn't plan this to be our career or our path. But what we do have in common is we tend to be curious, we tend to be somewhat intelligent, to remember and listen, this sort of thing. But we all of us are very curious,
Mm-hmm.
you
Sounds
know, and,
intuitive too.
and intuition is very helpful.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, yeah, like reading people's minds almost. It's true.
Yes.
You
And
have to
knowing
be
if they're
careful.
lying.
You have to be careful. In fact, I have to be careful. I don't know about everybody. I have to be very careful because I actually do read people's minds, and I don't want to do that. That's not the point of the conversation. I
Really?
want to hear what's on their
Well,
mind.
tell me about this. Just from all the perceptions?
It's just from having had so many conversations with people that I
Oh,
can
sure.
almost read their mind based on, oh, that little hesitation came in, whatever it is, that you're noticing. You're like, oh, okay, you know. And I don't even consciously do this,
Yeah.
but I have to be really careful and practice at listening and talking less. And I tell myself that. The other thing that's really helpful is to have an attitude before you pick up the phone to talk to somebody. And you decide what that attitude is. What do you want to accomplish in this call? But what's your overriding attitude? Not just what's the answers I want to get in this call. It's my overriding attitude with almost every call I make is I want to make that person at the other end of the line feel better at the end of the call than when we
Wow.
said hello. And that goes a long ways. And I think that's another reason I don't get lied to that often, because
Right.
it's a subconscious intention on my side on my end of the line. But people pick up on that. People are very, very sensitive.
Interesting. That it's so true. I had this experience. There was this Tony Robbins event where they were talking about men, women, different personalities, and there was this one kid, young man, when they invited all the guys in the room. They said, "Okay, anyone who thinks they're the best guy in this whole place, come on up on stage." Right? So
Mm,
a weird selection of people start going on stage. And so this one guy, he had this pink hat on. He was acting like a jerk. And I just, because of the way he was acting, I just didn't like him. And because we were all kind of jazzed up, I was like, oh, I really don't like this guy. And he's got this attitude, looks so uncaring and whatnot.
hmm
And Tony went over and asked this one lady in the front row, like, what do you think about this guy? Um, would you go on a date with him or any of this stuff? And she was like, no, she's like freaked out. No. And then there's other, lessons and whatnot. But then Tony whispered some instructions in this guy's ear. And then we were waiting and watching. Guy takes his hat off, starts looking at the girl, and they got a close up of him on the screen. And
Oh,
his whole face changes
hmm
and he becomes attractive. Right.
huh.
And we're like, whoa. And then they have another view of the girl, and you can see she's like confused. And then she starts like, I don't know, she's one of those like hair twirling things. All of a sudden she's like
Yes.
somewhat interested. And we're like, what the heck just happened? And so what he had told the young man was, all I want you to do is inside your head, when you're looking at this girl, I want you to say in your head silently to yourself, I love you.
hmm
I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. Right. Just say those things in your mind while you're looking at her. And all that did was sort of shift him from being this punk kid who I wanted to beat up because he was so arrogant, to being
hmm
this nice guy who was like, look, whether he meant it or not, like at the very moment, he was just saying, I care about you, and I'm going to look out for you, and it changed the whole thing. So I could see for sure, before getting on the phone call with someone, being intentional about, what's the point here? And if it's a positive one, having such a better result come from it would make such a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed I do a lot of cold calling too, and I noticed that
Oh, sure.
even when I do cold calling, and maybe even more so, that I've even had people at the end of a cold call, say to me, "Oh, thank you so much for calling." I'm
Really?
thinking, "Oh, thank you." You know? But it's just that I've treated them well, and
Yeah,
it's a sad reflection of our times. There isn't enough loving out there, to Tony Robinson's point.
it's true. It's
And
true. And to your point, even an email, right? I mean, I'm more on the email side,
sure,
and there's so many self-serving junky emails that aren't here to help you. It's just like, ugh, people can smell it. They just delete it. So like, to interrupt people and be like, no, 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 this is for you. Not, we don't need anything. This is just to help you. Just change that script up a little bit. Reminds me of Noble Purpose. I don't know if you read that book.
I
Lisa.
haven't. Say it
No?
again.
It's called Selling with Noble Purpose.
I'll have to write it down.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. Lisa Earl McLeod, and essentially she was brought in to look at some pharmaceutical reps. Like, there's like this one company with thousands of them. What makes them successful, what doesn't. She went with them, she watched them, she listened to their calls, all the things, and they was like a blind test. They didn't tell her who the best ones were. And then
Yeah,
after studying them all, she was able to predict who the best ones were. And she extrapolated that one of the key reasons that they were successful because they were selling with a purpose. They had a noble purpose to actually help out the buyer.
yeah,
And one of the best reps had told her that before I go in, or when I'm waiting to see the doctor and I'm in the waiting room, I look around me at all the people that are sick in the chairs, and I
yeah.
realize I'm here for them and I want them to feel better. And so that just gives
Wow.
her that charge to go convince those doctors that that's why she's here and all that. And it makes perfect sense in sales, makes perfect sense in marketing too. Like marketing can learn a lot from that book. You know, don't send out self-serving emails. Don't create campaigns like that. Just like, you know, a sales rep, you know, in a cold call or not are going to be, you know, good or not, whether they've got that purpose. You know, if you've got that purpose as a marketer, even if you're not talking to them one-on-one, then I think it'll show through, you know, that you're there for them.
Yeah, it really does. When I was in sales, I was quite good at that, as it turned out too. I got the last module you could get when
Really?
I joined the phone company back in the day before the initial AT&T breakup. And I wasn't initially picked to go with AT&T at the breakup because, you know, I wasn't making my numbers.
Oh, geez.
And of course, I had customers on my list who had never seen an account rep in their life, so they didn't know what to do with us. Well, anyway, the market hit 1,000 or whatever that magic number was back in the 80s. And I went in with a new account rep who did not have any. And that, you know, they knew they were going to split us up next year. So they had many more account reps than they needed for one or 2 years before the breakup. So I had this new person with me and I said, well, you always have to be prepared for when a deal closes at the first call. So I said, I've never had it happen. I don't think it's going to happen here, but we have to be prepared for it. Well, it turned out this was a stockbroker and the market had hit 1,000. He was ready to buy anything. He was so happy. And I was trying to talk him out of it because I just thought, gee, you don't even know how this system works. It might not be the thing for you. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
yeah,
it
you go
turned
back
out,
to you like you start flipping it up on them. You're like, whoa, hold on, let me make sure you're clear, and
oh
they're all
yeah.
excited. Yeah.
And he just insisted, where do I have to sign? And this, that, and the other. And it turned out we had to operate it in night service all the time in order for it to work the way it should work for his business. And it worked out okay, but I think another solution might have been better. But there you go, you know.
Yeah.
But when I was in sales, I remember that what my customers seemed to value the most was that I listened to them, and I didn't knock the competition.
Right.
You know, I didn't disparage the competition. And, you know, I kind of tell them the pluses and minuses of what I was suggesting for them. Or they might say, this is what I want to do. And I try to be objective. And as a result, I know one of them, when they were moving to a new location, oh, we want to order all this stuff from you, you know?
Right.
And that's a lot of what it is when you're in sales.
Sure.
It's a relationship. It's caring.
Right.
You
I
might
know
have,
you said earlier you love people.
I do. I'm a people monster. I love people. Even though I'm pretty introverted, actually, but I love people. I just love to hear their story.
Yeah. Talk to them, learn from them.
Yeah.
Connect with them a little bit.
Yeah. Everybody has a valuable story to tell, at least one, probably quite a few as
I
you get to know
agree.
them.
I agree. That's what I'm doing. I love podcasting. You know, I get to learn and hear stories, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine.
So, you know, last thing I wanted to bring up was you're in Colorado. I'm a little jelly because you've got mountains all around you. I don't know if they're nearby, but it seems like a pretty cool state. You started out east here a little bit, or at
Yeah.
least your dad did. So, you know, what are you doing for fun out there? Are you getting a chance to get outside or?
Oh, yeah. I'm outside almost every day. It's a
Are you?
beautiful day here. We have 300 days of sunshine. And
Wow.
our weather here is definitely a selling point. Like this morning, I was up at before 7. We have a 7 o'clock walk we take with a group called Walk to Connect. Walk, and then it's the number 2 Connect.
Huh.
Go check them out. And they started out here in Colorado by one of our neighbors who walked across America. And
Wow.
after doing that, he decided, gee, you know, I met so many cool people doing this. I should start a movement where people take walks with their neighbors, with their friends, with their colleagues in their same city or in their area. And he was so excited about it. And that's one of the things I do. But yeah, I liked it. I like to cross country ski more than downhill just because I have bad feet. You know, you really tight boots going downhill.
Oh, yeah.
And it just kills my feet now. But cross country, no problem. Snowshoeing, mountain hiking, you bet. I like all of it. And just walking. It's a beautiful places to go out and walk and enjoy. We have a lot of paths, even in the city of Denver. I'm
Sure.
now in the process of doing that, exploring all the urban paths. I just walked to connect. I gave them a donation. They sent me this book with all these nice, cool urban paths to go out
Oh,
and
wow.
explore. So I'm in the process of doing that. So yeah, Colorado is a great state. Love
Yeah,
it.
walk to connect. That sounds great. Just to hear some stories and
And the founder is Jonathan Stalls. And if you look him up on YouTube, with his first TEDx talk, he's in his 20s. He's a baby. He's still a baby. He's only in his mid 30s. But, it's great. It's just great to see that spirit. It's great to see that passion, you know,
yeah,
from
the
life's experience.
I'll have to listen to it. It's called the 2185-mile hike.
That's it.
2185-mile hike. Or no, life at 3
Three
miles per
miles per
hour.
hour.
Life,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Life at 3 miles per hour.
Yeah.
That's cool. You can
It's
check
very
that out.
cool. And you meet some really neat people that way too.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten really pretty connected with a number of the folks. We've been doing this for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years by now. Ours was the first walk because he lives right here in the neighborhood 7 years ago. We weren't living here 7 years ago. And we discovered them because one morning we were up at, I don't know, 7 o'clock doing something. And this group of people walks by our house and we're thinking it's obviously a walking group. What's the deal here?
Yeah, what are you guys up to?
Next Tuesday we joined them and they have walks all over the Denver metro and now all over Colorado, and it's becoming a national movement. I know we
Wow.
had some people out here from Maryland and over the summer, and they were setting up some walks around Baltimore and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat. Yeah.
Well, anything where you can actually get to know your neighbors again, I think is a positive thing. I think that
Yes.
used to be common, and now it's kind of a little more isolated. So I like the idea of ways that you can connect, and you're not trying to sell anyone anything. You're just trying to meet and
Yeah.
connect.
Just hanging out,
Yeah,
having a walk.
have a walk. So it's healthy at the
Yeah.
same time. Yeah.
And I live in a friendly neighborhood also in Denver, and that helps too. I know my neighbors; they know me. We have block parties.
Oh, nice.
That's a good thing too. Yeah, yeah. And I'm pretty tight with my neighbors, so I feel grateful there too.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Living the good life
Living a good life. I love it.
and traveling. Do you have events coming up
Um, I
or
don't
just
have as
consulting coming up
many.
more
I
like?
don't have as many planned just because we're so early into the new year. I have to figure out my project load and then go
Yeah.
from there. But
Yeah.
my husband's a oil painter, and so I
Oh,
go with him
wow.
to art festivals. And they started. There's one in March. There's probably one in April. There's one in May. There's two in June that I know about.
Okay.
And so those are all drives. And plus, I run my own business. So
Right.
and yeah, well, we just got back from a fabulous trip. We do travel. We were in Ecuador celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary in July
Wow.
for 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And we explored the Andes Mountains. We love mountains, so we just kept on going. And they're absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Volcanoes, beautiful farms way high up at elevation, which we never have in Colorado. We don't have enough rain. Just absolutely gorgeous. And the people there are just wonderful.
Wow.
And a
Ecuador.
lot of them are native, indigenous people, and they're just beautiful people. So we do travel. And just now, before Christmas, we decided to take a trip knowing that the first 6 months of next year are going to be, of this year, rather, are going to be a little crazy. We
Yes.
got into the car and we drove to Taos and Santa Fe, all the way down to the Big Bend National Park in Texas, and hiked around the Big Bend Park and the state park, which is right next to it. Explored did stellar stargazing at the observatory, the McDonald
Sure.
Observatory,
Yeah.
University
Wow.
of Texas. Fabulous outdoors, beautiful tour of the heavens. Fabulous. And but yeah, we took a nice big long tour. Ended up in El Paso and Juarez and
I've been over there.
Juarez,
Yeah.
the Guadalupe Mountains, the Oregon Mountains. Of a lot of hiking. That was the objective: hiking and exploring.
Hiking
And
and
yeah, we ended
exploring.
up home a couple weeks later. It was fabulous. But that we really enjoy seeing the world in our backyard and far away as well.
Yeah, hiking, exploring, that just speaks right to me. I mean, I love that. I wrote down a personal core value a couple of weeks ago to prep for the new year. And one was just, living life, enjoying it, and challenging myself with fun and adventure. And yeah, to travel like you did and get some hiking in so that it's active. And, nothing like seeing a place. Going for a morning run helps me find out about a place I'm staying at in a hotel if it's a business trip, but also, hiking
Mhm.
somewhere and looking down on where you were just staying is
Yeah.
awesome.
Good on you that you can go running. I can't run anymore. My body's saying, no, sorry. You're done with
So
that. You can get on a bike and you can walk.
mine likes to say that. I don't listen very well to rules and instructions. But
Ah.
I'll tell you what, this has been awesome. What are some of the links where people can connect with you for your company? Maybe if they want to do some of these insights as well, get more information, maybe follow you, learn about when the book comes out. What are some good
Well,
links?
my website is just ellennaylor.com.
Okay.
And I can show my book up close. That way
Yes.
you'll also get the right spelling of my name. That's the book.
Yep.
And there's Ellen Naylor in Lost and Out Handwriting.
Naylor. Yep.
Yeah, Naylor, which people on the East Coast get. Out here in Colorado, you never know. And I'm on Twitter at Ellen Naylor's my Twitter
Okay.
handle. I'm not as active on Twitter. I'm more active on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
And if you
Yep.
just look up Ellen Naylor, you'll find me. I mean, I think it's Ellen Naylor, Colorado. But
Okay.
yeah, people know you more by your name than your business, unless you have lots of employees.
True. True.
I was
Or a
trying to
killer
get my.
book. You got a killer book, so
Oh well,
maybe you're
thank
known by
you.
that as well.
Well, I'm starting to get more known by it. That's true. I'm getting more business in this space for sure. But and I wrote the book really just because I think more people should be doing it. And so I wanted to write a book that if you read the book and you followed the process that I outlined in the book in 12 steps, that you could set up your own win-loss program. Because more
Yeah.
people should be doing it. And that was really the intention I had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Noble purpose. And it's correct. We got to talk to our buyers. We got to talk
Yeah.
to our wins and our losses. And this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. I've learned a bunch. I've got notes over here and a brain full of new ideas.
Oh, I've enjoyed talking to you too and hearing some of what's going on in your life as well and your wisdom. So
Yeah.
it's all
Oh,
good.
happy to chat and share and just a fellow adventurer, fellow hiker. I'm now
Yeah.
inspired to check out some of those other countries. So
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you again for sure. And everyone else listening, if you learned anything, got inspired, share this with someone else that you think should hear this, especially if you're looking to create your own win-loss program internally. Definitely get a copy of the book. We'll put all the links in the show notes. We've got the show notes at hardcoremarketing.com. So go check those out, and we'll get all the links for you up there. But this has been awesome. So we will see you all next time, guys. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. Bam.